Good evening, everyone. This is a public hearing for the City Council to receive and review comments on a proposed update to the City of Newcastle Comprehensive Plan. Following this public hearing, we will also have a public hearing regarding a ordinance, emergency ordinance that will follow whenever this one finishes, and then our regular meeting will start at 7 o'clock or after if we need more time for the public hearings. So I'd like to recognize the people that are here on City Council. We have Mr. Russ Smith, we have Ms. Suzanne Souter, Mr. Michael Platt, Ms. Valerie Lear will be joining us a little later. We also have our City Administrator, Bill Barthel, our Jeff Bergrams, our building official, Dan Lasko, our City Solicitor, and the MSC General Manager, Pam Patone. And we also have Kim Bergmuller, who is hosting this meeting for us, and staff, Marika Levine, and our stenographer, Kathy Wyrick. At this point, also I'm going to ask Ms. Bergmuller, or Mr. Whitaker, and Ms. Carlin in the audience.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. It's great to have you this evening. I'd like to introduce Debbie Field with KCI. And she's going to give us an update, and then we're going to go from there and get some public comments. So welcome.
Thank you, President Ratchford. Tonight we're here to see if there's any additional comments that have been that will be received during the official public hearing for the 2020 Comprehensive Plan. The draft was released on August 12th, as everybody was aware at the presentation meeting. And we requested written comments in advance with the due date of yesterday. So I do want to let everyone know that we received 73 written comments from the general public, and 10 people, that includes some staff and council people, 10 people participated in responding with the comments. So that's of the general public, some of the staff members. As far as intergovernmental collection, I have to let you know that we notified City of Newcastle County, MAPCO, City of Wilmington, Municipal Service Commission, and the City Engineer. That was also released on August 14th, and we requested comments back on October 8th. I would like to give great kudos to the Municipal Services Commission, which Pam Patone and your City Engineer, Dave Athey from AECOM. They gave us very valuable input for the chapters that were relative to them as well. So we received 2 organizational comments back, and our total comments received are 96 comments collectively from the document. They were very good comments. We don't have any controversial comments. The meeting on October 26th, we will go through all of the comments in detail. But after tonight's meeting, I will be releasing all the comments without names, and they'll be posted to the website. So everybody can see all the comments that were submitted, and they are exactly the way that the people submitted them in their language and their verbiage. And we're gonna go ahead and release those to the public, and the commission, the council, and the boards can all see the comments that were collected. But we're looking for additional comments tonight that may not have been completed on the requested written form, and to close out the public comment.
Okay, at this point, if you would like to participate, this is an invitation to the public. Then if you could raise your hand in the app, and then Kim, if you would look for anyone that's raising their hand.
Okay.
I also at this point want to thank the Planning Commission for the great job and the leadership that they showed in terms of working with KCI on the update to our comprehensive plan. This is a very, very important task, and I know it's a lot of work, and so thank you very much. Are there any comments at this point?
Yes, I have Mr. Harris. I'm going to bring them in. A.R. Harris.
Thank you. Mr. Harris? You would try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. That'd be appreciated. We have a lot to get through this evening.
Let me unmute. Hi, and thank you. This is a very ambitious plan. I did read it. I just have a couple questions. Moving forward, how do you foresee paying for this ambitious plan?
Did you want me to respond, President Ratchford?
If you would start, and then we can also
Yes.
join in.
Yes. So in the implementation chapter of the plan, it has several goals, and there's a couple reasons why we cannot prioritize items and prioritize items, and while there's several goals. Everything is based on a budgetary activity. So in the implementation section, we recommend that the Planning Commission collectively get together with the mayor, president, and the commissioners of the city to talk about what needs to be done out of the implementation item in next year's funding. The reason it's looked at annually is because of federal and state funding. To do a lot of these projects, there's going to be other funds required to be able to implement these. If you implemented all of these at once, there would be too much going on. There wouldn't be enough money in the general budget. So basically what they're trying to do is every year these will be looked at. Some of these do not get done in a comprehensive plan for municipalities until the next round or some change. So it's a living document that can be modified at any time. But as far as the goals, the time, and who they're assigned to should be part of the annual budget process submitted from the Planning Commission for the City Council's recommendation and city staff.
I did see one thing that I was concerned about, and I thank you for everything that's been done so far, because it shows, I really like the way it was done compared to the 2009. It was very informative. I like that. On the maps, we have map 3, map 9, and I believe it was the state strategies, the last map. I believe it was map 8. What we have on the most northeastern side, where it butts up to almost Cherry Lane, the part that is within the boundaries, it's a wetland. It also says that it's out of play. Yet I find on one of the maps where it has that it can hold light industry and office park. And maybe that's just an oversight, because this is very involved. I know I'm putting it together, but I think someone needs to take a little look at that and see if maybe if that is just some area that's not supposed to be developed at all and was just put in there maybe by mistake.
I can address that again. So the state strategies map is environmental maps and determinations based upon the county, the municipality, fed up to the state. Those are regulated. Those are gone through the public hearing process on a statewide level. So if the municipality or any citizens wanted to change any of those maps, they just got done in 2020. They would then consider it on a state level, which is administered by Office of State Planning. For the municipality, we're required to show a future land use of all parcels of land, whether they can be developed or not. And it's very rare that we would put land use that cannot not have any kind of development, because it might be a tip of a property, but when you look at a piece of land and if you can develop it or not, you have to look at floodplain, you have to look at wetlands, you have to look at state strategies, transportation. There's several different layers that gets looked upon that. So the city's requirement is every parcel has to show a future land use category. But the state strategy is they look at the current data from DNREC and the federal government and municipalities. So they might not overlay 100%, nor would every parcel of land in the city be able to be developed 100% because of environmental constraints. And we have to take additional steps in the requirement.
So my last question would be, on a lot of the strategies, it's talking about appointing someone to do some of the things that I feel should fall within the city administration. Is that just because of the way it was written?
So as far as appointments, as we alluded to with the annual process, the Planning Commission needs to work with the city staff and the city council on if this is a task that can be done internally. Is there a skill set by the current staff, and is there availability? So if your staff is already running at 90% of their workload and not able to take on a larger project, a lot of municipalities will find funding or ask consultants to do the work. So that is also going to be very flexible each year in the annual process to determine what resources are available in-house or out-of-house.
And the repaving of our roads, where does that fall into this?
I'll answer that. Ms. Harris, that would be more of an operational type thing. And that is something that we talk about all the time, and we keep a list, and we'll be talking about next week at a budget meeting. The plans are very ambitious. And I will comment, I think, Ms. Phil, you made a few comments before about the fact that we had made a lot of progress since the last plan. And you look at a lot of these, so I take that compliment very highly. So I think definitely we should shoot high and just keep working toward our goals, but it is multi-year and certainly restricted by budget. So at this point, but I thank you, Ms. Harris. Those are a lot of good comments and a lot of good questions. So
Thank you.
appreciate it. Anyone else like to speak or ask questions?
I'm going to bring in Philip Gross.
Good evening, Mr. Gross. Yeah, also want to mention Mr. Whitaker is here. He is in part of the meeting. So I wanted to thank our city clerk.
Good evening, Council. I'd like to dovetail on Ms. Harris's statement, comparing the last plan to this. Yeah, this is much more in detail and gives everybody a lot more latitude in completing projects and more of the infrastructure. But my question is, I guess, Debbie, is getting back to the zoning. And even though the state basically has set forth certain areas as floodplains, wetlands, not buildable, I guess, like I brought up at the zoning, rezoning meeting a year and a half ago, and the statement was made that if a developer feels that they can build successfully and market and sell a product like the Garrison or anything else, then they're given the right because of the new zoning. My fear is that I feel the zoning for commercial or anything else should not be allowed to be zoned usable because it opens a door for interpretation. We've got to protect our wetland. We've got to. It's just pretty much that simple. So I really would beg to differ on how it's written or the mapping, but if that's state law, then that's the way it's got to be. But I highly don't feel that's appropriate.
So the state strategies map is a state map collected from data from several different resources, federal government and state government. The reason the municipality has to put the future land use map on, land use layer on there, is to determine what the city would like to see in the future on that property. If somebody comes in and wants to put something that might not work because of regulations, remember, they are still subject to several regulations under the future land use map. That's not zoning, that's the future land use. When they get to the appropriate zoning classification of what they're assigned, they will have to follow federal, state, county, municipal regulations. The problem you would have in putting a future land use classification as far as undevelopable, and I'm gonna probably forward more to Dan, the attorney, is it's not the purview of the municipality to determine the land to be undeveloped based on federal and state regulations. The property owner has the right to go to the state and the federal government and request changes or modifications, etc. It's the city's job to determine the future land use and the zoning and those applicable laws. So what we do not want to do is take away property rights by saying, we feel we need to protect the wetlands, when maybe portions of that property can be developed within that area once they go through a site plan process or do their due diligence. Is that about correct, Dan, as far as the legal part of not putting future land use on the map?
You're absolutely correct, Debbie. If the city were to designate on its comp plan some property as unbuildable, number one, that doesn't mean an owner can't go to the state and seek an amendment to the comp plan that would make it something that is a buildable category. But second of all, more importantly, if we strip an owner who has legitimate current uses of its property from any and all uses, then what the city has just done is to condemn the property and must pay compensation for that.
Sounds reasonable. So it's back to once somebody decides they'd like to do something, then it goes back to the city and they start the whole process. Tell us what you're going to develop, what part of the parcel, and so on and so forth.
That's correct, Mr. Gross, because they will be subject to the current regulations versus, it might be 10 years from the road, 5 years or a year. They'll all be subject to current regulations at the time of submittal.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, again, I really thank you guys for getting this together. It is pretty intensive and well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Gross. Any other comments or questions?
I think Mr. Walters from the Planning Commission wanted to say something. He called and asked to be let in, so I'm going to put him in right now.
Great.
Hello.
Hi, Mr. Walters.
Hello. Hi. I really don't have anything to say. I just wanted to be unmuted in case I did.
Well, we thank you for your hard work. You're on the Planning Commission, so thank you.
Is this,
Well, that's okay. I was asked to look at a site that was submitted as a late comment to the comprehensive plan, River Edge, and I went through the file and out to the site, and in case that came up tonight, I thought I might be able to shed some light on it. That's the only purpose I asked to be unmuted.
Thank you, Mr. Walters. We have that for discussion at the October 26th Planning Commission meeting. And we've made a recommendation on that site as well. Thank you for your research. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
is this the time to address municipal services, or is that and should wait?
That's later.
Okay, thank you.
Now, there are no other hands raised.
Okay, at this point, we appreciate everyone participating in this public hearing. I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
A second?
Second.
Second, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Platt. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we are adjourned and we're going immediately to our second public hearing, which is regarding Ordinance 529. It's an ordinance to amend and restate Chapter 28 of the City Code entitled Emergency Management. We do have on this public hearing, I'm Linda Ratchford, City Council President. We have Councilperson Russell Smith, Councilperson Michael Platt, Councilperson Suzanne Souter, Councilperson Valerie Leary is hoping to join us later on. We also have City Treasurer Janet Carlin and City Clerk Brian Whitaker. We have our City Administrator Bill Barthel. We have our City Solicitor Dan Lasco, our Building Official Jeff Bergstrom, Ms. Pam Patone with MSC, and also we have staff, Kathy Wyrick, our stenographer, Kim Berger, our host, Marika Levine, also on staff. So thank you very much for coming this evening to participate in this public hearing. At this point, are there any comments from the public? We will, as a council, have discussion on this particular ordinance later on in our general meeting, which will start around 7 o'clock. But at this point, I want to ask the public if you have any comments.
I'm putting the mayor in the meeting, but he's the only one with their hand raised.
No, I just wanted to let everybody know that I was here.
Okay, good to have you, Mayor.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I still think, personally, the council is going to have to do what it wants to do, but I personally, I've gone through this and I'm still trying to work through in my head the different moving parts that all of this, all these modifications create. And I don't mean that in any pejorative, or I don't want that to be misread as being negative. But this is quite a series of additions that we haven't contemplated before, and I just think I just want a little bit more time personally to consider them. But that's just that is my humble view, and I don't know, maybe others have taken a lot more time than I have. I've dedicated a fair amount of time to thinking about all this, and but Council President, as you wish, I'll be happy to go along with the views of the council. But I don't see any harm in just waiting maybe just a couple more weeks. But that's just, and I may be alone in that perspective. Again, I don't read anything negative into that. I just think that this is, I think there's a lot here that is an improvement. There's a lot here that is a lot of clarity. And I'm just still kind of going through all the pieces myself in my head to see how they all kind of would work in operation. So, and look, you can, if anything, you can, that could be an endless process, and I'm not suggesting that that's acceptable either. But if I'm alone in spending this much time with this revision, maybe it's just me. But since whoever holds the office that I presently hold, I think we should have time to deliberate carefully. So that's the only comment that I would make. But I do think that a majority of the changes, I think, make sense. It adds additional contours and clarity. But I just would like a little bit more time personally. But that's just my view. Thank you.
I really appreciate your comment. This has a topic that we have talked about for several meetings, and if we need more time, we can certainly spend more time. We just thought it was, important. Mr. Smith and I discussed it, and just to go ahead and put it on the agenda in case at this point everyone was comfortable with it based on our earlier discussions and concerns of making some changes in case we had to execute on the emergency ordinance again, which all of us hope does not happen. So, any other comments from the public?
Mr. Gross has his hand raised.
Okay, Mr. Gross.
Yes, I kind of mirror our mayor's sentiments that I think a few more weeks, because I've gone through half of it trying to kind of overlay as it is versus how it's proposed to be changed. And it kind of waffles, in different directions. Doesn't seem to have a necessarily clear direction. So if possible, obviously, if it needs to be read again, as part of how the process is, that's certainly good. But as far as a vote, I just feel we should give it a couple more weeks, if possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
Yes, President Ratchford, I'm reading it, and it's my understanding is that what's underneath the meeting agenda, you just pull up the blue part. What's in yellow is what you're adding in addition to what already existed if you reinstated. Is that correct?
Mr. Losco? I think there was some highlighting in terms of some changes, but what was posted should have been the whole draft ordinance. I know there's one motion I want to make this evening. You could clarify, maybe staff.
Anything highlighted or stricken out are edits from the first original draft, first discussion draft that went out, and were part of the first reading, I believe, last time we did this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, can I point out one thing that I noticed? from the council packet. And that is that the definition of, this is on page 2, item C, the definition of emergency management coordinator was further edited after our last meeting on the 29th. Mr. Platt had correctly pointed out that since we were designating the city manager as the de facto emergency management coordinator, it required a change to the definition to that effect. And I made that change and sent it over to the city, but it doesn't appear that that edit was implemented in the council packet.
Ed, my understanding, this is for a legal clarification, for that edit to happen, there would need to be a motion tonight to make that correction.
Yes, that'd be correct.
Okay. Okay. Anything else from the public at this point?
No.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate everyone's time. At this point, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Platt.
Second.
And a second, from Mr. Smith. I'm going to, in favor of adjourning the public hearing on the emergency ordinance, indicate by saying aye.
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 Thank you. And we will start our regular meeting promptly at 7 o'clock. We'll just stay on live, but we'll be starting it soon. Thank you.
Russ, how are you feeling?
Welcome,
Almost.
everyone. This is Linda Ratchford, Council President. I want to thank you for attending our October regular meeting of City Council. And I would like to introduce the other people here. Russ Smith, Councilperson Russ Smith, Councilperson Michael Platt, Councilperson Suzanne Souter, Councilperson Valerie Leary, also our City Administrator Bill Barthel, our Chief of Police Rick McCabe, the Mayor Michael Caranta, our City Solicitor Dan Losco, our Building Official Jeff Bergstrom, also our City Clerk Brian Whitaker, our City Treasurer Janet Carlin, and Kim Bergmuller, who is the host for this meeting. And we also have Kathy Wirk, our stenographer, and Marika Levine, who's here on staff. And for the first item on our agenda, we're going to make a little bit of a change here and going to have the presentation of the value of public power and water. And that's going to be Pam Potone for MSC, who's the general manager. And then also Kimberly Schuchting of DMEC. And they're going to also provide some updates on what's going on in that industry, and then specifically some MSC updates. Then we'll proceed with the rest of our regular meeting. So at this point, Ms. Patone, would you like to start?
Yes, I would. Thank you very much, Council President Ratchford and Council, for allowing us to get on your agenda for this evening. I really appreciate Kimberly joining us as well. Her presentation will follow mine, so I'll get started. Okay, so I'm not sure if anybody's aware, but last week, the first week of October every year, we celebrate public power with the American Public Power Association. And the commission felt that now would be a good time to kind of remind the citizens of Newcastle of the value of public power, and not just public power, but also water. It is the citizens resource, and we felt that we should remind you of the value of it. So 100 years ago, almost, it'll be in 2021 in March, it'll be 100 years, that the council of the city and the citizens wanted the management of their electric and water system to be managed by a commission. So the state of Delaware and the General Assembly formed the Board of Water and Light. And that was later renamed in 1999 to the Municipal Services Commission. The management of the commission is by 3 commissioners. One which is appointed by the mayor of Newcastle, one is appointed by city council, and one is appointed by the trustees of Newcastle Common. The commissioners manage the commission and provide oversight. They set the rates, they set the budgets, capital and operating, and they basically ensure that all the regulations are followed. The Municipal Services Commission has 20 employees. This is the organization chart. They're responsible for maintaining the electric and water systems, providing customer service, and then of course billing. These are just a few members of our team. I wanted to talk a little bit about what the MSC does. We do operate an electric distribution system. What that consists of is approximately 2,900 electric meters, 2,500 services for residential, 341 for commercial. Kimberly will go through some of the services that DMEC offers the members, but we do purchase our electric through DMEC, through the Joint Action Agency with the other municipalities in the state of Delaware. The electric revenues each year average approximately $9 million. 67% of that revenue is from our commercial customers through our 3 commercial parks. The water system is also a distribution system. We actually pump the water from 4 different wells that are on trustees' property located on the Penn Farm. We then treat the water to remove any contaminants, and we sell it obviously to our citizens here in the city of Newcastle. We have 2,300 water meters with an average $1.9 million in revenue from water, and 40% of that is from commercial accounts. So talk a little bit about the benefits of public utilities. Our system is very reliable. Our electric system has been awarded every year for the last 4 to 5 years a national recognition for its reliability. We keep the lights on, and when there are interruptions, we restore at a very quick rate in comparison to national averages. In addition to the operation of the system, we're able to provide cash appropriations to the city general fund. Last year was in the amount of $673,353. The city also is provided with free water to all their facilities. We do have some of the lowest rates in Delaware. The electric rates are one of the lowest within the Delaware. I'm also going to go through the comparison to investor-owned utilities so you can see the benefits of having your own public utility results in lower rates. The city, we also try to contribute our labor to the city when it's appropriate. And then one of the big pluses of public power is that you have local control. So they're not shareholders in a far off city. You have 3 commissioners that you can reach out to if you would like to have an input into the management of the system. So I provided this slide to give you an idea. We're surrounded by Delmarva Power and Artesian water users. So your neighbors that are within Newcastle 19720, but not within the city limits, are paying these rates. So an average household with a 750 kilowatt hours of usage per month would pay $94.31 in the city of Newcastle. Delmarva Power with that same usage would be at $107.35. We compare to Artesian, an average user of 4,000 gallons per month would be at $50.25. Artesian households would be $52.15. And those are all current rates.
Will that be the new increased rate that's being compared or not?
That is, and I appreciate you asking that. Let me go back.
Thank you.
The electric rate and the water rate, typically every year we have a cost of service study and a rate design done. And we have a consultant who evaluates the costs and makes a recommendation on rate increases. The rate recommendation for April of 2020 that's already passed was to reduce our electric rates by 1% and increase our water rates by 9%. The commission was, as everybody else was, affected by COVID, realized our customers were kind of in a new situation, as was the organization. So the decision was made to go ahead and reduce the electric rates by 1% back in May. and then hold off on the water rate increase for things to stabilize. So this comparison to Artesian already includes the 9% that's taking effect this month. I wanted to make sure I was showing current rates. So that's also using Artesian's current tariff rates on their website. This is just a picture of some of our infrastructure. In addition to having 2 substations for redundancy and reliability, we have a small solar system. We have our 1 million gallon tank. There's a Gray Street water tank, several well sites, and then our carbon filtration system. The operations and capital improvements, I'm not going to go into the detail on this slide because I think now might be a good time to update everybody on the current projects that have been going on. Hopefully everybody has read through the press releases and is aware of some of the projects we've been doing, but this gives us the opportunity to stand in front of everybody and answer questions if needed. So January 2020, we were able to begin a multi-utility aerial to underground project on Delaware Street. This was in cooperation with the city for their street work and Delmarva Gas for their gas work. And that is almost complete, I'm happy to say, even though we did have some changes with COVID and challenges, we were able to continue to move forward. We have just recently gotten updates from Verizon and Comcast, and everybody anticipates having all the individual services transferred by the end of October, which was our original date that we had hoped and anticipated. The poles and the lines we don't anticipate to be down by then. That would be too optimistic. But by the end of this calendar year, 12/31, we hope to have the poles that are there down and the lines removed and the sidewalks restored. So it's been a very successful project working with the other utilities. We've learned from this project and we think it's went very well. The Van Dyke project, Van Dyke Village, we did have to pause that just recently to move our crews over to the Delaware Street project. But before we paused it, we had completed 11th Street, Balt Street, and Stuyvesant, except for 2 different homes on Stuyvesant. Once we get back there, we will pick up with those 2 homes and then start on 14th Street from Stuyvesant to Moores. Our expectation is to schedule possibly a Zoom meeting. We had a request from a customer out in Van Dyke to have maybe a Zoom meeting. We thought that was a great idea. We did have some public meetings in the beginning of the project, but we know it's a very long project. We expect the whole project to be man hours to be approximately 6 years. So we're just a year or so into this. So we're going to try and get a Zoom meeting together for Van Dyke Village residents so that anybody can ask questions and we can try and give an update on the timeline and so forth. As I mentioned, with COVID and then with weather constraints, there are sometimes delays and we appreciate everybody's patience. The only other thing I'll mention on this slide is that at the bottom you see that we do have future plans for possible AMI meters. We are reviewing the benefits of smart metering. Our AMR system was put in back in 2005-2006 timeline. It is nearing the end of its useful life. And we do see a lot of benefits that we could secure for our customers, for our billing system, and also for our outage management system. So we'll be updating people on that in the near future. This is just an updated information regarding our billing online. Since the last time we presented to council, we have allowed for credit cards to be accepted via telephone and online. So that's a new update. We also have been doing a lot of phone notifications, trying to keep people updated on information. There is a text capability and we're just now rolling that out. And if you haven't seen any information on that from us yet, you will be seeing it shortly. Just a reminder that we also handle our Freedom of Information Act with the MSC's information on our website that's here. And then these are just kind of posts from our website in case you ever need to go there. Just a reminder, when we take emergency calls, you have to leave a message. We do make every effort to get back to you, but we do roll trucks as soon as we get the first call, so you can be assured that we are addressing the concerns as soon as possible. As was mentioned, with the sunshine rules and everything, we do have our meetings posted on our website. Our financial statements are there as well. Our tariff, which is all of our rules and regulations. So anything that you might need related to electric and water should be on here. Our annual drinking water is posted on our website as well. And then this is just a follow-up, as I mentioned last week, was Public Power Week. I think maybe we'll hold off on the Q&A until Kimberly has the opportunity to kind of talk about the partnership that DMEC has with the MSC and then the benefits that they provide to their members. So if I can, I'll just turn this over to Kimberly now.
Thank you, Pam, and thank you, Mayor and Council, for letting me come to talk with you a little bit about who DMEC is and what we provide for our members. So this is my first time doing the Zoom meeting. Do I put my own presentation up here, Pam?
Yes, if you push share screen on the bottom of this screen.
Yeah.
And then if you have it on your screen, that way you can show your presentation and then just forward yourself as you go.
And let's see. I don't know if it's showing up there for you all.
Yes, and if you want to do slideshow and begin at the beginning, and then you'll just click as you move forward.
Let's see. Okay, here we are.
Great.
Cool.
So again, my name is Kimberly Schlichting, and I'm Chief Operating Officer at the Delaware Municipal Electric Corporation. We are a joint action agency that was incorporated over 40 years ago. And we were incorporated to serve and represent the 8 municipal electric distribution utilities in the state of Delaware. We are owned by and we are dedicated to serve our member municipal electric utilities. And our mission is to advance the principles of public power, community ownership, and to provide reliable energy to our members. Our members consist of Newark, Newcastle, Middletown, Clayton, Smyrna, Milford, Seaford, and Lewis. Each of our members have directors and alternates that sit on the DMEC Board of Directors, and they provide direction and oversight to us. So Pam Batone serves as the director to DMEC and Roy Sipple as the alternate. Just to explain joint action a little bit too, when I say that, sometimes people don't understand what we mean. It's really a group joining together to benefit from the economies of scale. It's like if you go to Sam's Club and you're buying in bulk, theoretically you should get a better price because you're joining together. So by the municipals joining together, we hope to buy more economical power for them and to provide the economies of scale of other services that we provide to the members. So DMEC's power supply value comes from a diversified portfolio of supply resources. DMEC owns assets, we have power supply contracts, and then we purchase spot market energy from PJM. So our owned assets consist of natural gas fired generation, such as the Beasley Power Station, which is located in Smyrna. Some of you may have been to Smyrna to visit that facility. If not, please let me know. You're welcome to come down and take a tour of the facility. We also have stake in the Fremont Energy Center, which is located in Fremont, Ohio. We have wind and we have several solar generation facilities. Our contract supplies are to hedge risk, and with our spot market energy, we use that to balance load and supply. This optimized portfolio provides for stable, low-cost, reliable wholesale power supply to Newcastle. DMEC has made significant investments in wind and solar generation, and in the block below, you can see several of our sites of solar facilities, And you'll see that you're even up there. Newcastle is 29 kilowatts of a solar facility located behind the meter in your community. DMEC's renewable energy generation benefits us in a way that it powers over 24,000 homes in Delaware. Our generation reduces over 153,000 metric tons of emissions each year. That's equivalent to removing over 32,000 cars from the road. And also, we eliminate the burning of 163 million pounds of coal each year. So that is a significant contribution to lowering emissions in the state of Delaware. And we are able to do this while lowering costs to our members. This chart shows that from 2012 through 2019, we have had declining cost for our members. So DMEC's wholesale power supply cost reductions have actually allowed Newcastle MSC to lower rates to you significantly. And as Pam was mentioning about you having low rates, as of yesterday when I was looking at our comparison chart, Newcastle residents enjoy the third lowest rates in the state of Delaware. So DMEC has made commitments to renewable energy in our power supply portfolio. So the state RPS went into effect in 2006, and since then we have been participating to reach a target of 25% renewables by the year of 2025, while minimizing costs and controlling them to our members. We do that by trying to develop projects behind the meter in each of our member communities. That helps us maximize savings from reducing capacity and transmission costs and certain ancillary costs. Participating in renewable energy helps reduce the impacts on our environment through carbon savings and reducing greenhouse gases. And we continue to do this and implement renewables into our portfolio while considering the lowest cost, which meets the goals. DMEC helps support energy efficiency programs. We've partnered with Efficiency Smart, which many of you may have heard about. MSC has been a big proponent of this partnership and has helped us to get this going. All 8 members of DMEC have enrolled in the Efficiency Smart program, which benefits all customer classes and your community as a whole. Not only does Efficiency Smart help, different residential and commercial buildings with maybe retrofitting more cost-saving lighting fixtures, but it educates customers on ways that they can save energy now and into the future, which will help lower their costs for themselves and ultimately your utility. In 2019, DMEC's program reduced electric use by 2.6 million kilowatt hours. That's equivalent to the annual electric use of 236 homes. Not an insignificant number. So DMEC looks to what does the future look like and how will we power into the future? We're always looking at the newest technologies that are coming out and how do we implement them to help our members. Battery storage is one of the hot topics now, and the importance of where we go with battery storage will help support increased solar in our power portfolio to help maximize the benefits of that. We look at things like electric vehicles and how do we implement those as our customers ask for more of those. Emily Green of my staff, I believe, has sent a report to the MSC commissioners to talk about what it would cost to put in charging stations, what kind of grant money is out there, and how we could help you, foster pilot programs, and not just for Newcastle, but other members have looked into this too. So we're always trying to find what services do our members need and want, and what can we provide for them to help benefit the community. One of the big services that we provide our members is training. DMEC at our headquarters in Smyrna has a training facility, And the biggest benefit is that we can bring outside training in state. This means that you don't have to send your staff out of state, potentially paying for airfare, food, lodging. Instead, you send them down to the road, they come to our facility, they learn if there was an emergency back home in the middle of the day and they had to leave, they can leave and be back home in a matter of maybe half hour for Newcastle. And they don't have to be away overnight somewhere else. Our training does not only, isn't only focused at linemen, but we bring in speakers to help with best practices in customer service, rate design, and a host of other things. We've updated, COVID has helped us to update on-demand webinars on our website and to implement a new training portal too for our members. You are welcome to also join in any training sessions that we offer and put out there. So you are welcome to reach out and partake of those too. We provide on behalf of financing. I saw in Pam's beautiful pictures of the different projects, the substations. So DMEC helps its members with that too. And as new needs arise for the MSC, DMEC will design and implement those programs to meet those needs. We will continue to listen to not only Newcastle, but our other members too, to understand your unique needs and design programs and services to continue to help our members be successful. That is why we exist, is to help be an extension of your staff back home and to be successful. I promised Pam I would keep my comments brief and to give an overview of DMEC. I could talk about DMEC for hours, but I will not bore you with that. So if you do have questions, please feel free to reach out to us if there's any topic or something that we hit in the presentation that you'd like to hear more about. Love to talk with you and share information. Or you can visit us on our website to get additional information. And you can also friend us on Facebook to stay plugged in. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. Were there any questions for myself or Kimberly, for me?
I have questions. This is Mrs. Harris.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for the green initiative. I appreciate all of it and appreciate what you're doing. I have a couple of things. You mentioned the Van Dyke Village project. However, Bott Avenue is part of Boughton, which also President Ratchford is not mentioned in the comprehensive plan at all. Is Boughton part of that plan?
Yes, you're right. Balt is not part of Van Dyke Village. However, it was part of our aerial to underground project. So I appreciate you pointing that out.
So I'm on the other side of more, so I can expect it to be happening within the 6 years that's projected for this plan.
I'm going to have to check on your address, Ms. Harris, and get back to you because there was only a portion of Balt that that was affected. So because we did Balt and completed the section that we were referencing, I'm anticipating that maybe yours is not. But if you don't mind, I can get back to you tomorrow. Do we have your phone number and contact information on your account?
Yes, I'm also the one that submitted the email on the overhead fraying of the electric lines.
Okay, great. I will reach out to you tomorrow if that's okay.
That's fine. I have one other question. Since we have an upwards from the financial statement of 16 million in net assets, how come we have to raise our rates just because it was suggested? And are we doing anything to expand a water treatment, our water treatment facility?
Great question. And water treatment, I will say, is the quick answer as to why we have to raise the water rates. As you may know, we've had some contamination of our water over the past several years. We've had to put in the granular activated carbon filtration system. And so costs associated with that treatment result in increases in addition to just regular maintenance and so forth. As you may know, our water mains are, they're in fairly good condition for being over 100 years old, but we've been doing an active repair and maintenance program where we've been testing the water mains to see whether or not they need to be replaced or cleaned and relined. In certain areas where we're able to just clean and reline, we have been very successful with that. But just the infrastructure and to maintain the water system as we need it to be reliable are the reasons why we need to have the rate increases. Unfortunately, for years, I will say that we did not, as a commission, adopt increases in water rates. They were hesitant to do so. In addition to the fact that it was easier to raise a lot of revenue quickly if we raised our electric rates instead of our water rates. But that was not really appropriate because the costs were really associated with water. So there's a couple different reasons why we're increasing the rates. The recommendations from the consultant are managed, and management gives input and the commissioners make an educated decision. We don't just go with the consultant's recommendation, but we do take it into consideration.
Well, what's the lowest acceptable platform for how much is left over in net assets?
That's a great question. I can talk to you about the financial statements specifically. If you're talking about the net assets, most of that is infrastructure that hasn't been fully depreciated. But I don't want to get into the details of the balance sheet at this meeting, if you're okay with that.
I'm fine with that.
I'm glad to talk to you about it tomorrow when we talk about the other stuff. And I can take you through what that 16 million that you're referencing actually consists of.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison. We're going to see if there's any other questions from the public regarding MSC. I know council may have some questions too. Anyone else want to raise their hand?
I have Mr. Gross.
Okay, Mr. Gross.
Real quick, and I do remember it was brought up when the project was put on board for the street lights in the underground cabling in Van Dyke, but I don't remember the exact financial detail. Is there any cost incurred by anyone outside of that neighborhood as far as factoring in to the budget for rate increases or decreases for the work being done and the actual product being supplied?
So all of our projects are typically evaluated when they're at the end of their useful life. Van Dyke's electric infrastructure had been put in, I believe, in the 50s, and it was at the end of its useful life. So it had been fully depreciated. Then we do a capital project and we incur costs to restore that infrastructure, and then it becomes depreciated. All of the electric and water infrastructure throughout the community is factored into the rates. So I can't say to you that not everybody is paying for all the electric infrastructure of the city. I can't say that we break down each development because that would be kind of prohibitive to try to do such a thing. Does that make sense, Mr. Gross?
Yeah, I guess my only thought on it is that you brought the attention to infrastructure and use of life or end of useful life. I got to believe there's other areas that have not been updated that are much older than that development, I think.
So we take into consideration age, and then there are other factors, reliability. So as we had discussed when we put out the information regarding that particular project, we've been tracking our electric outages on a system called e-reliability for probably 10 years now. And we had a history before, but this was this was a beneficial software to utilize. Anyway, it identified Van Dyke, and as we already suspected, as a system that was not as reliable. And the reason being is that it had, rear background or backyard aerial lines. And with the trees that have grown up, we've had a lot of outages in that area because of it. And when we have an outage in a development, it's potential that it can take the entire city down, or at least portions of the city. So it does affect, you know, other customers outside of that area. And so there's costs associated with that too. We have higher maintenance costs. We have to roll trucks. We have to send guys out to do repairs and put poles back up. So we have to take into consideration not just age, but the reliability of the system, the design of the system that was put in back, you know, whenever they were put in. We have water mains that are 100 years old. They're in better condition than the stuff that was in the 50s because of the war, and the water mains are, the metal was not as thick. So it's not just age. So I don't want to go into too much detail, but you know, so those are the kinds of things we take into consideration. Does that answer your question?
As on point as ever, Pam. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Grosser. Anyone else the public want to ask? Ms. Patone? Any questions? Okay. Anything from council or the mayor?
Councilman Platt here. Pam, Kimberly, I'd like to thank you for your time tonight. And you said something that kind of caught my ear. You said that Verizon and Comcast downtown is probably going to go underground. I know there was a lot of discussion on the Van Dyke project that they weren't going to. Did they commit to go underground? I mean, I know you guys actually planned ahead for that, but I don't know if the other two companies committed to it.
Comcast has, Verizon has not committed to going underground in Van Dyke or anywhere else. We kind of worked an agreement for this particular one that will have to be paid for. But we agreed to do that for this small portion of the project because there was, we wanted to utilize it as a learning experience partly, and to also kind of work through the relationship with Verizon. And because already a portion of Delaware Street was already underground because of the years ago when there was the movie put in. So it was kind of a, I would guess to say I don't have a commitment long-term on that, Mr. Platt.
Okay, thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
my other question is, it went from 4 to 6 years?
So I apologize for that. And I've noticed that there's been a communication, yes. There was a communication issue, I believe, with the financial outlay and the actual labor. So when we were talking 3 to 4 years, we were talking about cash outlay, and we realized operations and accounting weren't speaking the same language. So that's one of the things I wanted to get out in front of the citizens and explain as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, anything else from mayor or council? Any questions?
This is Councilman Smith. I'd just like to commend Pam and her team for the fine, consistent service that they provide to the community.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We're fortunate to have both of you and your organizations.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Okay, at this point, we're going to go back to our original agenda, and we're going to start with the minutes of September 8th regular meeting minutes and September 29th special meeting minutes. I had on the regular, I had one comment. It should be Crier, or C-R-I-E-R. That's the only comment I had. Anyone else have any other comments? And then on the special meeting, page 1, it was the council to reach out to it's really to the DDD consultant, not to GMB, to discuss doing a market analysis. So any other comments on either one? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of September 8th and September 29th as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Okay, minutes have been approved. At this point, I'm going to ask our treasurer, Janet Carlin, to talk about the treasurer's report this month.
Good evening, everyone. This is the unaudited report as of September 30th, 2020. The total unrestricted funds is $4,300,000. This is as of, as I said, September 30th. $4,377,057.72. Total restricted funds, $2,369,532.41. Total cash in the accounts, $6,746,590.13. I did want to mention that regarding the property tax right now, we have the report reflects that we have collected 112% of the budget. Actually, the fact that we had reduced the budget from $3,025,000 to $2,715,000, it kind of distorts the percentage is distorted somewhat. However, the actual monies received this year versus last year is $27,560 more in actuality at this point, and we're only 3 months into this budget. So we're doing well overall. I'm looking forward to revisiting this budget pretty soon, next week, and we'll see what we can do to help things along. That's all I have.
Thanks, Ms. Carlin. I know that when we prepared the budget, we were very conservative, not knowing what would happen, but it is good news that we're basically exceeding last year's budget. So
Yes, we are.
yes, and so, and I guess in terms of our expenses, it's still pretty early. Any comments on that?
I don't have any comments on that because, as you said, it's very early. We're only 3 months into this. That's why I'm looking forward to seeing how we are exactly next week, and maybe we'll make some. We will definitely be making some adjustments, I would say. There are many things that our wish list that we had that we obviously couldn't put into the budget, and we have to revisit that.
Thank you. Any other questions for Treasurer? At this point, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the Treasurer's report unaudited.
Second.
Mr. Platt, second from Mr. Smith. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. It has been approved
Thank you.
unanimously. Thank you very much, Ms. Carlin.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Then the next thing we have is our reports from city administrator and staff.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. I've got a couple of things for council. We did, today was the first sheriff's sale that happened since March. Of course, council was aware that the sheriff's sales were stopped because of COVID. And as I think I pointed out on numerous occasions, we had 717 Climber teed up to go to the April sale. And of course, that didn't happen, but it did happen today. The sale price was $37,000, of which the city will get about $28,000 in fees and fines, taxes, legal expenses. So that's really a nice way for us to start the sale, or to get back into the sale, I should say. My plan is basically, and I'd had some conversation with Mr. Lasko about this earlier today when we talked about the results of this sale. We're going to reconvene with staff and look very hard at other properties that, to get back into continuing the process of being aggressive and trying to go after those properties that are nuisance properties, and properties, of course, that you know, that we should be taking to sale. So that's a positive note. I think the treasurer kind of went over what I was going to talk about in terms of our transfer tax. I know we have a budget meeting next week, a week from tonight, which of course we will get, as you said, more into the details of where we are year to date, not only from a revenue perspective, but an expense perspective as well. And of course, we'll revisit, you know, the quote wish list of the things we talked about from the city's, you know, from our perspective, and of course from council's perspective, you know, as planned back in June. I will say this, and I think I'd mentioned this at an earlier meeting. You know, we did receive an additional 120,000, or we did receive the 120,000 in municipal street aid that we had projected. We basically projected zero for that, not knowing what the state was going to do. So I'll just remind council that we did get that as well. Last month, there was a discussion concerning signage and the recommendation for oncoming traffic signs. Basically, oncoming traffic does not stop sign, and it was suggested by the mayor and I think Mr. Smith in regard to the type of sign, but the mayor was asking for those signs on 2 of those on South and 7th. We have ordered those from DelDOT, and I expect those to be in the next few weeks. At Mr. Smith's recommendation, we also ordered the same sign, which will place at Delaware and 2nd as soon as we get that as well. So we did order them, and they will be in hopefully in the next couple of weeks. There was also a discussion about speed limit study within the city. Jeff reached out to T Squared, and they did agree that they would help us with an engineering study, but we would have to supply the data. So I did speak to the chief about that, and we're going to put together a program where we do radar studies on the various streets, as I said, within the city. We'll get that information to T Squared for their review and a recommendation. So hopefully we'll be able to get that started in the not too distant future. I think, oh, I'm sorry, Delaware Street. I did get an update from Delmarva this morning in regard to where they are. Evidently, they have 5 services left to do, and those 5 services have been scheduled. And the plan, and this is from the email I received, the plan is still to have the street work completed for the city, us, by the end of October. So I know the mayor had reached out to some folks at DelDOT. I know Mrs. Ratchford reached out to some folks. Obviously, we made it clear that you know, we're anxious to get this project finished. Though they would not commit to the end of October, they did say that was their goal, to have that portion of the project done by the end of October, and then we can just basically, you know, go in and finish the project. I don't know, Jeff, is there anything, you know, you want to add to that, or any update from Cirillo's perspective or any of the other contractors? You're muted.
There we go. My fingers are greasy. I tell you, I have great faith in Delmarva that they'll finish the project sometime. After they finish, we're going to have to see if we can get the pavement down the top coat this year. MSC scheduled to be out of the sheriff's house project by the end of next week. I think there's a reasonable chance we could go through with the paving this year, and then take the poles down after the pavement's done. That seems reasonable. Delmarva also let me know that the big project down the trail will probably finish up by the end of November too. So we should be construction free for a while at the holidays.
I think people would like that. I will say I've heard a lot of compliments about the end of the Strand cobblestones.
Oh, they're great.
We kind of futzed with that a little bit.
Did a good
Madam
job.
Madam President, can I ask Jeff a real quick question about this?
Yes, sir.
Madam
Of course.
Go ahead. Yes.
My name is Council President. Jeff, when you look at Delaware Street currently, and what's going to happen with the existing layer? Are they going to come in and take that off and they're going to smooth out any soft spots, or are they just going to now at this point, since they've set the curbs and done the utility work, are they going to come in and just put a new layer over the top, or what's the plan with the existing base that's there right now?
It's a complete mill and overlay. After we mill, we'll proof roll the whole street, and that'll let us know what we're getting into if we find any old trolley tracks or soft spots. But it'll take a while to proof roll, but we'll do every inch of it, and then I imagine it'll be pretty much solid, and we're going to put down a nice new layer of asphalt. The profile of the street has nothing. Will match the curbs that are there, but the milling will be differential. It won't be just flat. It'll have a crown to it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Rathel?
That's all I have, Madam President. And if there are no questions, well, until we get to the COVID discussion. So, I'm sorry.
The chief, does he
I
have
was going to say that, yeah, the chief. I was going to say that's all I had. Chief, if you have anything you'd like to.
Thank you. Yes, good evening. I do have a couple of items to discuss. First is, many of you are aware, we received our accreditation, and we appreciate council support during that event, those that were able to attend and those that reached out after the fact. And if I could just very briefly summarize for those that aren't familiar with what this meant, accreditation is basically, it's a progressive and time-proven way to help us calculate and improve our overall performance. And its foundation lies in the promulgation of standards that contain a clear statement of our professional objectives. We went through a self-analysis and had an independent team assess us, and we were successful. So now the goal is to maintain it. So I just wanted to cover that for those that were not really familiar with the process. We have a couple of initiatives that we're excited to introduce tonight. One is known as Protect DNA. All of these are going to be pushed out through our Facebook page and our website, which I'm going to discuss here shortly. Protect DNA, basically, we're going to partner with the name of the company is Protect DNA, and we're going to offer kits to residents that where they can mark their property that they feel is valuable. All this will be explained in detail on our Facebook page, and we're going to get as many of these flyers out as we can. We're going to schedule appointments for residents to come in and meet with our operations captain, who's going to provide them with some kits, a UV pen, and bike registration information if they're interested in that. And basically, in a nutshell, what it does is it allows residents to mark their property with something that becomes invisible, has its own unique code to it that can be seen with a black light. That code will be registered and helps track the property. It will help us identify recovered property, and it'll also allow us to enter stolen property into a database and compare it to other databases, particularly pawn shop databases. So we're hoping this initiative is successful in helping us recover property that's stolen. Again, we're going to push that out on a website that we hope, I'm going to discuss briefly tonight. We're hoping it's up and running in about a week. I was hoping it was going to be up and running at a meeting so that I could provide the address and the domain. But I do believe it's going to be there in about a week, so I didn't want to wait till next month. Once it's out, we're going to push the address and domain out on our Facebook page and any other way we can. We're really excited about this this website. It's going to be very unique just for the police department, and it's going to have a handful of different functions. Probably one of the most important parts of this website is, of all the tabs that we have, one of them is going to be a way for folks to have real-time communication with us. There's going to be explanations on how and when and where to call 911 or the non-emergency number. There's going to be a list of all of our officers and how they're broken down into squads, how to reach out to one of their officers. So if you've had contact with a police officer and you you're not sure how to reach out after the fact, you're going to have email addresses, phone numbers with a voicemail box. It's also going to give residents an opportunity to reach out to us real time. This is our on-call staff phone. I drew the short stall tonight. There's going to be a link on this website that goes directly to an email address that will ping this phone so that our staff officers can get back to folks in real time. Even if it may be us acknowledging that we've got the email and that we'll follow up within the days to come. It's going to give residents an opportunity to reach out to the on-call supervisor in real time through the non-emergency center. We're going to be able to push initiatives and outreach programs on this website with links that you can click. It'll show some of our past events. We hope will encourage folks to participate in our future events with an outline of what we do, what the purpose is, and the fact that we can use some community help. We're looking forward to, we're talking, of course, in the post-COVID era, of creating a Citizens Police Academy that should have its own tab when we're ready to do this. We want to encourage people to participate in this where they can get an in-depth look at very briefly, but an in-depth or an inside look at what it's like to be what it's like to be trained and to do this job. And we're hoping stuff like that will kind of bridge the gap between us and our residents. We're going to be very transparent with a lot of our policies, so you'll be able to have access to our policies on this website. They'll be identified by name. You can click on it and actually read it. I hope to start at the end of this year providing an annual report that we're going to post on our website. You can click on and see all the statistics that we talk about throughout the year. So we're excited about this, and we're hoping, I just looked at it a little while ago. I could see them building it as we speak. So we've put a lot of content their way, and it's a lot to go through. So once we've worked the bugs out, we're looking forward to pushing that. The last part of that website is a goal to create a crime mapping system so that residents can click on a map and see what's happening in their neighborhood or in the city, focusing primarily on quality of life kinds of complaints. So again, we're looking forward to that. And as soon as we're up and running, we're going to push that information out through every platform we can find. The two more brief outreach programs we're talking about. I spoke with somebody with public health last week. And as you know, we've hosted a handful of Narcan events. We're one of the only agencies in the state that has a police officer that trains the public in the use of Narcan. We're going to join with DPH with their funding. They would probably coordinate the event. We feel comfortable that we can do this in a space that would abide by all COVID regulations and have another one of these programs where we train residents in the use of Narcan. And once we get that firmed up, we're going to also push that out on our Facebook page. And then lastly, we are probably at the end of the week, we're going to have an officer graduate from a very complicated school known as the Drug Recognition Expert School. It's a very challenging course. It's a little over 2 weeks, and it gives us the unique opportunity to have access to an officer that can field test operators that are under the influence of drugs. We all know the standard breathalyzer for alcohol. This is more of an expert evaluating behavior and some scientific ways of establishing probable cause that somebody's actually under the influence. They're so rare that when somebody asks for a DRE, a statewide page goes out, and any of the DRE trained experts can respond. OHS would fund a response if our officer were off, and to either come in here or to any other agencies to help. So an OHS would fund all that overtime. That's all I have tonight if anybody has any questions.
We thank you, Chief, for all your professionalism. And really, the accreditation is a huge thing, and the next steps that you're taking to continue to improve your department and the service to the community. So thank you.
Thank you.
So Mr. Berthel, anything else?
That's it, Madam President. Thank you.
Okay, council communications. Anything council would like to say?
Go ahead, Bella.
No, go ahead, Ms. Souter.
Okay, I have a couple of quick things. I attended 2 Zoom sessions put on by DENREC regarding, they're calling it Delaware's Climate Action Workshop. I frankly was hoping for more concrete ideas as to things the city could do, and didn't get a whole lot of that. It seemed to me more about planning to make a plan kind of stuff. But I did learn one thing, that the Biden School at the University of Delaware maintains a database for funding for resident communities, which may help us if, once we figure out what we want to do, it may at least help us get the funding for it. And the council president and I attended a workshop on downtown development districts, also put on by the Biden School. It was informative. I guess the main thing I got out of it, and perhaps Ms. Radford will have more to say, was that the communities that take the best advantage of this don't wait for people to come to them. They have an active program going out and seeking people, trying to get them to develop properties within their community. And I'm hoping maybe we can get a group of primarily citizens, not council members, to work on this, because I think that would help develop our downtown better than simply waiting for people to come to us. And finally, just an observation. In the past couple of months, several people have mentioned to me that they're frustrated when they see code violations or problems with properties. They're reluctant. And I told them, well, the way that that gets investigated is if somebody makes a complaint and they don't like being put in the position of having to turn in their neighbors or, be the bad guy on the block. So I don't know if there's anything we can do about that. I mean, Ms. Vickers in Dobbinsville came to us last month, and I know Ms. Leary's going to talk about this later with the problems with the potholes, but that's different because the streets aren't your neighbor's property. They're the city's issue. And I don't know if there's anything we can do about it specifically, but I just wanted to let everyone know that that's out there as a concern. That's all. Thank you.
I have a question. I don't, Bill may be able to answer this, or Jeff or someone. Can anonymous complaints be made?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't know the answer to that. Thank you.
Okay.
We get them often, I would say.
All right, and then they get checked out and dealt with if.
As if, yep.
Okay.
Even if it wasn't an anonymous complaint, you wouldn't go to someone and say, well, Mr. Smith next door complained about your property.
Good point. That's a great point, Madam President. That's absolutely right. Even if we got a complaint with somebody's name on it, we don't. Now, sometimes if someone complains anonymously, that doesn't give us the ability to contact them sometimes. In other words, if there's no contact information, we can't call and say, okay, can you be a little more explicit? What are some of the things you're experiencing, that type of thing? But yeah, absolutely. It's anonymous in the sense that we wouldn't disclose anybody's name anyway.
Well, Mr. Bartel, I knew that the city didn't just routinely go and say, Mr. X, Ms. Y complained about your property. But I understood that if the homeowner said, well, who's complaining about me, that they had the right to get that information.
No.
No? Okay.
No. I mean, Dan, you can chime in. I suppose somebody could do a FOIA request, but even at that point,
If a written, this is Dan Losco, if a written complaint was made and they created a public record of it, that theoretically could be requested under a FOIA. But generally speaking, if it's a verbal complaint, there's nothing to produce.
But the complaint form is a written complaint, so.
Correct. Doesn't have to be signed by anybody in particular.
Okay. But if it is signed, that could be a FOIA request.
I don't see any reason to withhold that. I could evaluate the FOIA statute for exceptions, but I doubt that an exception would exist for that.
Councilman Platt here. Just to kind of let you know, I've had people complain to me and I've passed it up the line and the problems were taken care of. So I kind of take that as part of our job is to represent people. I mean, I've told Mr. Martell, different neighbors, different neighborhoods. I'll give them addresses or, general areas. And if people want to stay anonymous, it would come back on me.
I think that's a very good point, Mr. Platt. So I think that this Council President Retchford, the more people tell us and then the more we can advance that knowledge to staff, then the better we can all be because we work for the taxpayers. Any other comments from council?
This is Councilman Smith, just something that's kind of fun. The North American Vexillological Association is working on designing a flag for us. There are 40 members designing flags. These are flag specialists. And then the 40 flags are going to be judged by 70 other members. And the cost of this is nothing. And so we're getting the premier flag experts in the country working on coming up with some flag designs with us. And the idea, I hope, is that we could narrow it down to a certain number and then maybe have a competition in the weekly and have folks vote on what they think. This might, I don't know how far this will go, but it certainly has been interesting so far.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Smith. Any other council comments?
Councilman Platt here. Just a quick one. Might be an unforeseen consequence of the Delaware Street project, but the sidewalks in town are looking really good. I mean, I guess the 3 or 4 feet that they're coming back after laying the curb really flattened them out. It looks real good down there.
I would agree. Mayor Kranta?
Thank you. I don't know if I jumped in front of Valerie. Valerie, did you?
No, I'll cover it later. That's fine. It has to do with the last thing on the agenda. It'll be addressed there.
Got it. All right. So, Council President, thank you. Members of council. So I just want to, I'd like to just make sure that for the public, because I know there's been some early discussions about taking a look at the feasibility of a municipal campus. And I want to go back because I don't think we should skip over or miss the opportunity to repeat kind of what the predicate is for even entering into the discussion. We have a number of different buildings. They are of varying age. They are of varying quality. And it may, and the operative word there is may, it may be in our best interest to move from all of those different locations and go into a single place that is modern and that we then could realize savings and efficiencies and have a better experience for the employees and the public when they deal with the municipal government. You also would have the return of those buildings that are presently dotted throughout the city, of putting those back into production in a different kind of way, and they would be productive in a tax-paying sense where presently they're not. So the effort to study all this, and that's all it is at this point, is I think at least worthy of consideration. It may be that the overall expenses are such that the project is untenable. It could be that the numbers and all the resulting information comes back and suggests that it's a pretty good idea. It's hard to prejudge, but I think I would just think that for everybody, and I'm not saying this to council, I'm suggesting this to the public, that everybody should just kind of hold their powder until sufficient time and study and thought is given to the entire concept and the economics and the understanding of all that's involved is kind of put together in one place. This Friday, weather permitting, we're going to try to have another movie, and it's not looking particularly good right now with about a 70% chance of rain. So Ferris Bueller is going to get more than Friday off. He's going to get a couple of months off, because I don't think we're going to go forward on Friday, unfortunately, which means we'll probably look to trying to restart a program like this in the spring, late spring, like maybe in May, when we can take advantage of cooler weather, but not as cool as it is today, and maybe less rain, and still shortened an evening hour that comes sooner, so we don't have to run the movie late into the evening as we did on our first rendition. So, but the public should be checking out the city website when we make that judgment later in the week. But judging by the forecast, it looks a little dubious at this point. We do have graphic bike trail markings that we hope to have completed soon. And this is borrowing on the branding and also some help from James Wilson, who lives over on 4th Street, who is with Bike Delaware. If you recall, there's a project, there's a gas line project happening just outside the city, but along the bike trail, and Delmarva, upon my request, they said they were going to have to take up the trail, and they were going to have to do some disruptions that included a little bit of the city, but some not so much. But they agreed to repave the entire length of the section of the trail that they would be working on, and I asked them if they could fund some roadway markings that would lead bikers coming from the Wilmington area into the city of Newcastle. That is, they approach Shawtown and then try to find their way to the bike rack on Delaware Street, right next to Nora Lee's, and the pathway that leads down to the restrooms where they can park their bikes. They agreed to do that, and so we're going to test that out to see if rather than putting up a sign on the street, this would be a marking that would be on the pavement. We'll see how long they'll last, if they last. But the funding for that is coming from Delmarva, and we appreciate their willingness to do that. Flu season's underway. I know that we're all focused on the pandemic, but seasonal flu is here, and I just want to remind everybody that they should get a flu shot. And I believe a number of the pharmacies are doing that at no cost this year. So this would be a good time to take full advantage of that. I do plan to engage the Arts Council later this week, and any interested neighbors who want to participate in conversations about perhaps a permanent performing arts facility in Battery Park. We have a rickety old trailer. We've had very successful events during Separation Day, the concert series in the park. We've attempted a movie, we've done other things, and you know, there's a lot of other things that we perhaps could use a stationary facility for, that would be architecturally nice, and that would be something that would be befitting of the kinds of events that we'd like to have in the city. We're kind of limited right now because we can't, it's difficult for us to have concert bands or symphony bands, dramatic presentations, maybe other kinds of things, TED Talks, etc., that would be of interest to the residents. So I'm going to at least start the conversation with the Arts Council and share with council their thoughts and recommendations at the appropriate time. And certainly take anybody's input, solicited or unsolicited, I'm sure. With Halloween coming, I hope everybody is very considerate of all the different state recommendations, but also neighbors that don't necessarily want to open their house, but also for kids who've been in large part sequestered away and have been going and receiving instruction virtually this year. I don't know what the options will be that different people will take. But I think, you know, it'd be nice to see if there are some neighbors who would perhaps do something in the park or some open air place where kids could be socially distanced, have a mask on, and maybe provide some kind of fun experience for them. Even if maybe some parents choose not to have their kids go door to door, or some residents choose not to participate this year for obvious safety, health, and different reasons. But whatever the choices are that people make, I hope that everyone will be considerate of the choices that people make and be respectful of the choices that people do elect. We've got some new street lights downtown, and I've heard from a couple of people, and I actually was in touch with Ms. Patone earlier today, because they're very bright. They're white LEDs, and they don't seem to match the amber color that populates the rest of the area. And she's said to me that they are looking at different options to see if they can find something that is a bit more softer and blends in with the existing amber color lights that populate most of the downtown area. I am going to ask the Tree Commission to continue the discussion about a holiday tree per, I know Mr. at the last meeting, Mr. Bergstrom had done some cost expenses. We asked the Tree Commission to start thinking about and recommending to all of you about a particular site. And then finally, I would be remiss, and I would hope that all of you will join me too, in congratulating and thanking Henry Gambagorda for all of his years of service on the trustees of Newcastle Common. He announced his retirement after 48 years of service to his community, and we are appreciative for all the work that he did. And with that, Madam President, I yield back.
Okay.
Madam President,
Yes.
if I could just make one comment on the permanent structure at Battery Park. Just a word of caution. That was in the comp plan survey, and maybe it was worded poorly, but it really wasn't well received, any kind of permanent structure in Battery Park. So just a caution, you might want to look at that question, how it was worded and what the responses were. I'm sure Dave will share that information.
I appreciate that, Councilman Smith. I did look at that, and I think you hit on the right subject. I mean, there's been discussion about size. Is it a clamshell? Is it something that architecturally fits with the community? Is there some kind of scale? There's a whole range of different topics, and so I take the point. I think it's a good point. I will engage with the Planning Commission. And look, if at some point this gets any kind of interest and traction, we're going to have to come back to all of you, include the Historic Area Commission, include others. This would be quite some journey, but I do look at the programs that have been produced over the course of a calendar year each year. There's a lot of expense that goes to the different events for having to rent the same stuff over and over and over again. And then there's, of course, the quality of the existing infrastructure that we have, the trailer. And I think of how much more we could do and the savings and the quality of the kinds of events we could have if we had something very modest, but fits in and looks nice. And so I think I'd like to kind of put my thumb on the scale on this one a little bit. And but your point's well taken, and I appreciate the feedback.
Yeah, I agree with the mayor. I've seen very nice yet modest bandstands in other places. Chesapeake City comes to mind right away, and they're really nice. I'm not sure I'd want, say, a concert venue type shell or anything, but something like in Chesapeake City would be really nice. And having done the concerts myself for years, I know it would be appreciated probably by the bands as well. So,
Any other questions for the mayor?
Yes, Suzanne Souter, I have one. Since the issue of the Christmas tree came up last time, a couple of people have said to me, well, what's wrong with the Christmas tree we have? Why do we need a new one? And I don't really have an answer for that. I mean, I know its branches are widely spaced, so if the lights aren't put on properly, it doesn't look very good. But the last couple of years, the workers have done a better job with the distribution of the lights. But is there more to it than that?
No, thank you for the question, Ms. Souter. So I guess everyone gets a slightly different reaction to this because art is art, and the beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I always felt that the existing tree was perfectly serviceable, but we've had commentary over the last couple of years where people have ranged from it's perfectly accessible to what a raggedy old tree, cut it down. And kind of everything in between. And I think the criticism has been a little harsh at times and frankly a bit unfair. Having said that, I took it upon myself, as I reported on probably about a year ago, to have a conversation with Mrs. Coleman out at Coleman's tree farm to see if they would be willing to even consider a generous donation of a mature tree, that if we found a particular site that we liked, something that we could transplant here in our community, perhaps keep the existing tree and have an additional tree, or maybe use some new tree as perhaps the tree, and it was a tree that was grown with using, being that kind of a tree because that was its intended purpose as it matured. This would be, I think, a nice amenity. Again, I would try to find a way to do this and bring this back to all of you in a way that if we could understand the expense, if any, that the city would incur. But I think the first thing we have to find out is, is there sufficient interest? Where would we locate a tree? If we went to this, would we put it in Battery Park? Would we put it, there's several different locations. It doesn't necessarily have to be downtown. It could be in any number of locations that I could think of. And so if we think about all that, to me, it seems like a conversation that's worthy to continue, just because it's about this time of the year where we will get a range of opinions about the existing tree. So thank you.
Thank you.
This is Linda Ratchford. Well, last year, MSC, they basically hand tied the lights to all the limbs and, went up the tree base and basically put in all the light strings. So we have to thank them. They did a very nice job. I have only a couple of things. The bike event, which is on October 3rd, they had 270 people pre-registered, which was the maximum for the River Towns ride. It was not a contest. It was just enjoy the ride and earn medals if you want. Councilperson Souter and I rode to Wilmington and back, and a little bit ways on Route 9. It was a very enjoyable day. It really didn't look that much different than a normal day, but the great news is of those 270, 60% were from out of state. So it's great to introduce new people to our city. The Kelmer Nickel is coming in on Saturday. You can't go on board, but she'll be here this afternoon if the weather allows, and it's not looking very good for Saturday either, but hopefully things will brighten up. That's all that I had to contribute. The next item is, this is an opportunity for public comments. This would be public comments on agenda items. I will say there's the last agenda item is regards to Dobbinsville, and I will open that up at that point for public comments. So if you want to talk about Dobbinsville, I would wait till then. The topics we have are on basically on city operations budget and recovery to COVID. That's a discussion. We have a second reading of 529 on emergency management and a possible motion, discussion, and vote. We have a first reading on an ordinance to amend and restate the Board of Health Code. That would be basically a first reading. Then we would have a public hearing, and in that case, we would want input from the Board of Health. Also, a first reading ordinance number 531, an ordinance to amend and restate section 141-9. Our new business, we have resolution approving the City of Newcastle Outdoor Recreation Parks and Trail grant application for a path in Battery Park because the city owns the property. We have a resolution reappointing Marion Caban to Board of Election. And then the last item is the Dobbinsville street repair and updates, which if you do want to comment on that. And of course, we did just already have a public hearing on emergency management. So at this point, I'm going to open it up to the public for public comments. And if you would like to comment, if you would raise your hand, or you can also punch *9 from your phone. And each person, if you would limit your comments to 3 minutes. Once you raise your hand, our host, Kim Bergmuller, will put you through. So, Ms. Bergmuller, do we have anyone that would like to speak?
Mr. Gross has his hand raised.
Okay, Mr. Gross.
Oh, sorry. Quick question. Will there be a time for public forum at the end for non-agenda items? Because unfortunately, the two issues I have are not agenda items.
Mrs. President, we've changed the format. So this is public comments on anything, any topics. I just went through the agenda because sometimes people want to focus on the agenda, but if you have a topic, other topic you'd like to mention, or if anyone else would like to mention, this is your opportunity.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, if you would start the time now, be greatly appreciated. I think, is there any more money in the pipeline that's been approved to study the feasibility of the municipal complex? Or,
Not at this point.
okay. As a suggestion, that with, I attended a couple of programs with U of D on their climate change, their ability to track specific types of storms and their intensity. I strongly suggest, instead of trying to meander $10.5 million or put any more money out for any more study, I strongly recommend council shift its attention towards other issues that can have a much more far-reaching effect than just combining buildings. Because in fact, even if the study, if $10,000 more is spent on studying the feasibility of such a complex, the project's not going to happen for many, many, many years. So to put money out now when the whole project is going to change in scope, I think is a disservice to the community and certainly a continued waste of money. Second thing I brought up last month was I feel strongly that Separation Day should be brought back under the umbrella of the city, because in fact, it was well run for many, many years. Now that we have 2 years worth of state subsidies and more money from the trustees, there's no way that it can be screwed up. And I think you'll be able to control the money much greater by doing it within the city. And last but not least, Mr. Bergstrom, with regards to this Delaware Street, I was under the impression that part of the problem in the street and its waviness was the bed underneath and past wood pilings or wood tracks from trolleys and other things that had deteriorated. So to not take it down a whole nother level, I think if it's not 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, it's not going to live to its full life, because now that the street's open, that you don't take it down another level. Again, I'm no expert. You might know better, but again, just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Bergstrom, will you respond to that last issue?
As I tried to say before, the street will be completely completely milled, the wear layer will be milled off. Then we're going to proof roll it. That takes a very large truck, is fully loaded, and walk beside it and watch what happens at the base. So if we see anything or notice any deflection, we have money in the budget to excavate that and restore a proper subbase.
Okay, thank you. Any other members of the public who would like comments about anything?
Ms. Harris would like to speak.
Okay, Ms. Harris.
Thank you. I just want to respond to Mayor Caranto and Valerie, Councilman Leary. For the concert, if we were to go with a platform that is permanent, I don't see why we wouldn't go with concert lights and not limit ourselves. I also read about the community pool and fitness center. With our climate change, I would love to see a permanent fitness center that's outside in Battery Park, possibly by where the kids play, so that if I take my grandchildren there, I can also exercise while they're playing. And that's just a suggestion. And I also read in the comprehensive plan that ADA curbs have been put in everywhere. On Moore, we do not have ADA curbs at 13th and Moore or 14th and Moore. And I don't know if that's coming in the works or not.
Okay, thank you. There is going to be some improvements on Moore, which is a state of Delaware. Mr. Barthel, can you comment on that? There's an intersection that will be improved.
Yeah, there were, we received some information from DelDOT a couple of weeks ago. And I don't have all the exact improvements on those corners, but to Ms. Harris's point, I mean, we have been putting in handicap curbs throughout the city for years now. And we will continue to do that, and we will continue to get to, and we will get to a point where, you know, our goal is to get to 100% of city-owned, where there are, you know, city-owned curbs, they will be refitted to, you know, to properly, to ADA requirements. Jeff, do you have any more information on the DelDOT project?
Yes, DelDOT's going to go out and do one of those intersections. I think it's 14th this year, and they should proceed to do the rest of them that are on there right away. The city is really not in a position to start modifying DelDOT's right away unless DelDOT agrees.
Right.
So are our streets on Moore part of, are they owned by the city? Are the sidewalks owned by the city or the county? Who's responsible for our sidewalks on that side?
On Moore Lane, the street, the sidewalk is in the state right of way.
Okay.
The county doesn't have anything to do with it, and really the city hasn't nothing to do with it either.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Harris. Anyone else would like to comment? Would raise their hands?
Nobody else has their hand raised.
Okay, we're going to go on to the next agenda item. And that's going to be the one we have on every agenda, unfortunately. It's council discussion and possible action on city operations budget or recovery due to COVID-19. I just listened to the governor's weekly press conference. Then they described us still firmly in the yellow category since positive cases are increasing and hospitalizations are increasing. They seem to have gotten things under control at the University of Delaware, but they're concerned more from, you know, private gatherings, family and social, and possible, you know, possible infection from those types of things. So they did publish some guidance for Halloween. I know that a lot of people are very interested in doing things for Halloween. I love Halloween. I think it's a very fun holiday, and I'm disappointed we can't have the parade today. That this year have the Halloween parade and other things, but there are definitely some individual suggestions. There was a person mentioned having some of the streets closed, and the chief and city administrator took a look at that. Chief, would you make a comment about that? concern?
Yeah, I think the request was, it put us in an awkward position to close the street in one part of the city and then not be able to do that throughout. So I don't know how feasible that is. And plus it would also kind of encourage a gathering that could end up, violating some of the COVID rules.
This, typically the city doesn't like actually do anything in regarding Halloween. We don't set the holiday. We don't manage the holiday. We do our normal safety management things. Like some cities, tell you what time you're going to trick or treat or whether trick or treat's canceled or not. And in our case, it's really not under the city responsibility. And so we, like individuals, make their own decisions regarding whether they want to trick or treat this year or whether they want to do some other type of event. Any other comments from the rest of council?
Isn't it being discouraged statewide?
Normal standard trick or treating is considered high risk. I mean, there's some suggestions: leave the candy at the end of your driveway. Some other suggestions on things like carve a pumpkin with your own family. And we could certainly put the ones that have been published on our city website. Is just there's real concerns about the normal way of, and basically not being able to socially distance. So other things related to COVID, I think maybe the city administrator could update us on some of the safety measures being put into the city office.
Sure, Madam President. We have ordered the air purifiers for the HVAC systems that I think I alluded to last month. They have been ordered for the 3 facilities, and these should be installed within the next few weeks. The door buzzer system was installed today, and we're still waiting for some further recommendations from Tetra Tech and from Layla in regard to some other facility upgrades that we can do, but we are moving along with that. And I think the putting in the HVAC system, the purifiers for that, I think is a big step for the facilities, and we'll just continue to do that. To your point about, where we are still in phase 2, and as I said last month, same thing, we're still in somewhat of a holding pattern in that regard. So we're still kind of managing things the same way, again, but moving forward with putting in more safety processes and procedures, so for that time when we do go into, when this thing loosens up a little bit and we can go more into a normal working environment.
I would encourage everyone, this is Council President Redford, to get tested periodically. The state is encouraging people just in terms of trying to monitor the situation, because the big concern has been asymptomatic people or pre-symptomatic, whichever you want to call it. I did a home test last week and got the results back in 2 days. It was very easy. It's just one thing you can do to try to keep yourself and everyone else around you safe. Any other items on COVID that we'd like to bring up? I have a question about street sweeping. Do you think we could do some street sweeping?
We have been.
Like
we have been doing street sweeping, but we're not asking for people to move their cars just because in trying to get that message out. And with people still, with many people still working at home, we have just, in fact, Mr. Platt had suggested that, I think, some time ago. And so we have gone into various communities and we'll continue to do that. And we'll certainly use the sweeper in regards to helping with leaf collection, which it was very helpful with last year as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on COVID? The next item is the second reading of Ordinance 529. Do you have a motion to suspend the second reading, which is typically our practice?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed. Okay, we've suspended that. The next item is a motion, discussion, and vote on Ordinance 529. At this point, we'll open it up for discussion. The purpose of this ordinance is basically to update what's been there years, and to give council a more active role. I know there was one change that I wanted to make, and others may have other change and other discussion topics. There was a suggestion in an attempt to, this was basically what we, there was some discussion on whether there should be an emergency coordinator immediately appointed by the mayor, or the mayor should be that emergency coordinator. But in fact, the city administrator is by default the emergency coordinator all the time. Having a state of emergency is a very rare circumstance. We have lots of emergencies in the city when storms have come through, and we've been able to control that and manage that from a staff standpoint with everyone pulling together. And I think the city's done a really good job. But in the case of a state of emergency, we're at a whole different level. And so that question came up. So there is, my motion would be to modify the section that is under C, Emergency Management Coordinator, and that should be modified. And I'll ask Mr. Lasko to read it if you would.
Thank you, Madam President. The revised language would read, it's a definition for the Emergency Management Coordinator. And that would be a designation for the city administrator on the emergency management team, unless another person is designated by the mayor pursuant to section 28-4 of this chapter, who shall be responsible for implementing the mayor's executive decisions in accordance with an emergency management plan. The emergency management coordinator's designation shall expire at the termination of the applicable emergency.
Any other things you noted, Mr. Lasko?
There were no other substantive changes made since the last time council looked at this on September 29th. So it's the same document we otherwise read as a first reading on the 29th.
Any other comments or discussion?
Madam President, like I said on the 29th, I think we took a giant leap for no reason. This is the first time, like you said, we've had many emergencies in this city that was handled by staff quite well. Like I said on the 29th, the only thing this order, or the only thing this emergency declaration from the mayor was to shut down Battery Park. That is the only thing that happened. I brought up on the 29th that there's some really serious, in my opinion, and Mr. Lasko actually agreed with me, constitutional issues and some procedural issues. And I'll echo what the mayor said. I went and looked at the county's emergency plan, and it's probably half of this. I think we should sit back and think about it. I just think this is an overreach of power for the government, to be very honest. And my thinking down the road is we don't know who's going to be mayor, and we don't know who's going to be the city administrator. We don't know who's going to be the city solicitor. And I think we better think real hard about this 10 years down the road to service the citizens properly.
But, and I think that's what we're trying to do. There was actually some things in our existing ordinance that probably were not constitutional. And I think Mr. Lasko was instructed to not write anything that wasn't constitutional, but there's a wide latitude. I will make this comment. We're a little bit different organizationally. In the case of, I mean, many cities did not declare a state of emergency. They didn't feel that they needed to. They were covered under the state. In our situation, there was the Battery Park, and there were a few other things that were done in terms of trying to serve the public. In the case of like the county or the city of Wilmington or the state of Delaware, there's the chief executive officer basically does everything. In the case of the city of Lewis, there's a mayor and council, and the mayor is part of council, or in the case of the city of Newark, and they are still doing some state of emergencies, and that's really primarily related to University of Delaware, that they are doing state of emergencies, but it's the mayor and council acts. In our particular situation, we were trying to get council involved so that council could have a role in the emergency action. So, I mean, if people think we need to study it more, I'm happy to postpone it. If there's specific things that you think go too far, if we had specific comments, I think that's always helpful when we correct individual things.
I think that's aligned the way I'm thinking. I mean, like I said, the one that really kind of gets under my goat because I can't understand it, and I don't even think Mr. Lasko could explain it to me, is the rationing of food and medicine. I mean, to me, that line should just be struck. Do we ration it to the strong? Do we take away from the weak? Do we give it to the old and not the young? I mean, that's a pretty powerful line within this ordinance. And I mean, there's a couple of them like that, and I'm using that as an example. And I think that's where we really have to revisit it.
Well, if you want to make a motion to, I mean, I think that no one wants to do any of this. I mean, you know, I think the thought would be that if we were in such dire straits that you had to allocate food or whatever, we would want that power. But, you know, I think that no one wants to be able to have to do that. But if you think some of those are too extreme, I would suggest that you have specific things you'd like to strike and you make a motion. If you think you need to spend some more time on this, depending on what the rest of council thinks, then we can certainly wait a while.
Well, okay, I guess my opinion would be, I mean, and even with the discussion on the 29th, I've said some things and Councilperson Saller corrected me. She was correct. And, you know, I respect her for that. And I'll make the motion if we just take another month to submit a revised or changes to this solicitor.
Is everyone else okay with that?
I'm sorry.
I'll second that.
Yeah, I would say let's not take the entire month because that puts us into the meeting. So let's make it 3 weeks. If it's okay with the solicitor, give him a chance to digest those suggestions.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. So all those in favor in tabling this until the November meeting, but with the goal of not waiting to that meeting, but providing specific comments in advance, indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, we have a table for this evening. Thank you very much. I appreciate.
I just have a question. Should we simply email? Because I had a suggestion for modification of section 28-4. And should we simply email those to Mr. Lasko or go through you or Mr. Barthel, and then you'll consolidate them and send them to Mr. Lasko? Just a procedural question.
Madam President, may I respond to that?
Yes, please do.
I want to be careful of any council person sending a council-wide email with their suggestions to avoid FOIA problems.
Right.
I suggest they be filtered through directly to the city administrator and perhaps to myself as well, please.
Okay, so I should just type mine up, send it to Mr. Bartel with a copy to you.
That would be perfect. And then they can all be summarized and discussed at the next council meeting that way.
Okay, thank you.
Madam President.
Yes, Mayor.
So Mr. Lasko, I'll just put mine on the record and I'll send it to you separately. But what I need to wrap my head around is the role of the mayor, the emergency management team, and the emergency management coordinator, and how all those pieces work together. You don't have to take any time now, but I'll follow up separately with you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The next one is agenda item is a first reading ordinance number 530. It's an ordinance to amend and restate Article 2 of Chapter 193, the Board of Health of the Code of the City of Newcastle. As we talked before, this one's a very antiquated code. There are all kinds of things like port positions and privy wells and slaughterhouses and things we don't deal with right now. And many things that have been taken over by the state. But Mr. Alaska, if you could just summarize what the proposed changes are.
Thank you, Madam President. Flip into that spot. Okay, so basically this ordinance 530 does a couple of things. Number one, it sets the number of the members of Board of Health to 5. It provides for staggered 3-year terms, so they'll always have some continuity on the board. It requires that at least one member be a physician, and they're not necessarily a city resident. So that's the first part. The second part is really summarizing or modernizing, rather, the powers and duties of the Board of Health. The Board of Health's role here is really to deal with, it could be problems with diseases, it could be problems with refuse, it could be problems with, in general, with the water supply. So what we've done is to remove and modernize some of the ancient provisions, some of which you mentioned, privies and what have you, and it's just limited to dealing with the spread of diseases, controlling of nuisances, providing for sanitary water supplies, and providing for proper collection of garbage and disposal of wastes. So this is what it's more focused on. It's really a modernization of it as well as a staggering of the board.
Okay, at this point, since this is to be a first reading, we'll need a motion to consider and then a second.
Motion.
Motion, and a second.
Second.
A second from Ms. Souter. And I'm going to ask for help from reading. Mr. Laska, would you read ordinance 530 for me?
Thank you, Madam President. This is ordinance number 530, an ordinance to amend and restate Article 2 of Chapter 193, the Board of Health of the Code of the City of Newcastle. Whereas the City Council of the City of Newcastle is charged by Title 16, Chapter 3 of the Delaware Code to maintain a local Board of Health to help ensure the health, safety, and welfare of all residents of the City of Newcastle by administering and enforcing the regulations of the city's sanitary code, Chapter 193 of the City Code. And whereas by the adoption of this ordinance, the City Council intends to amend and restate Article 2 of Chapter 193 of the City Code, establishing the city's Board of Health. And whereas the City Council finds that the provisions of this ordinance are rationally and reasonably related to, substantially advanced, and are narrowly tailored to achieve its goal of protecting and preserving legitimate governmental interests, including but not limited to the protection and preservation of the public health, general welfare, and quality of life. Now therefore, be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Newcastle as follows. Section 1, Article 2 of 193 of the City Code, Board of Health, is hereby revised, amended, or replaced with the following. Article 2, Board of Health, Section 193.3, membership, term, quorum, vacancies, officers. Section A, a Board of Health shall be established by the City of Newcastle consisting of 5 members as determined by City Council. Members of the Board of Health shall be appointed by the mayor, subject to confirmation by the City Council. Members need not be residents of the City of Newcastle, but at least one member shall be a duly licensed physician at all times authorized to practice medicine in the state of Delaware. Section B, individuals currently serving on the city's Board of Health as of October 1, 2020 shall complete their current terms of office. Thereafter, new appointees to the Board of Health shall serve staggered terms in the following manner. The first new appointee shall serve for a term of 1 year. The second new appointee shall serve for a term of 2 years. The third, fourth, and fifth new appointees shall each serve for a term of 3 years. After the expiration of the initial terms of such newly appointed members of the Board of Health, all subsequent appointments shall be for 3-year terms. Section C, the mayor shall have power and duty to fill all vacancies in the Board of Health by appointment, subject to confirmation by City Council. Any such appointment to replace a member whose position becomes vacant for any reason prior to the expiration of that person's term shall be filled only for the remainder of that term. D, the City Council may, for sufficient cause, remove any member of the Board of Health by a majority vote of said council. E, the Board of Health shall appoint its own chairperson from among its members annually. F, the majority of the members of the board shall constitute a quorum to do business. Section 193.4, powers and duties. Subject to the terms of any state of emergency proclamation by the mayor under Chapter 28 of the City Code or similar emergency proclamations by state or federal authorities, the Board of Health shall have all general powers and oversight authority as granted under Title 16, Chapter 3 of the Delaware Code, as same may be amended from time to time. In addition, the Board of Health is hereby authorized and empowered to A, make rules and regulations for the conduct of its business, B, declare specific properties, matters, or things to be a nuisance and detrimental to the public health, C, consult with the Delaware Department of Health on disease prevention and report dangerous diseases to Delaware Department of Health, D, promote healthy communities and healthy behaviors by recommending policies and city code amendments on issues of public health to the City Council, E, serve in an advisory role to the mayor in the event of a state of emergency has been declared under Chapter 28 of the City Code, F, adopt, promulgate, amend, and repeal rules and regulations consistent with law for the following purposes. 1, to prevent and control the spread of all diseases that are dangerous to the public health. 2, to prevent and control nuisances which are or may be detrimental to the public health. 3, to provide for the sanitary protection of all water supplies which are furnished to or used by the public. 4, to provide for the proper collection, storage, and disposal of wastes, garbage, and refuse. 5, to provide for the sanitary control of public swimming and bathing places. 6, to provide for the safe and sanitary control of fumigation and the use of insecticides. 7, to provide for sanitary control of public eating places, public campgrounds, and service stations. And 8, to protect and promote the public health generally and to enforce all the laws and ordinances pertaining to the public health. G, take such other action or perform such duties as are or may be specified in other sections of the city's sanitary code, Chapter 193 of the City Code. Section 193.5, by resolution of the City Council, the board may maintain, supply, and operate offices, health centers, and health stations. The offices, health centers, and health stations may contain facilities for general health purposes, as in the opinion of City Council may be necessary to carry out the powers and duties of the board. Section 2, if any section, subsection, sentence, clause, or phrase of this ordinance is for any reason held to be unconstitutional or invalid, such decisions shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions of this ordinance. Section 3, in the event any existing ordinances or parts of ordinances are in conflict herewith, the provisions of this ordinance shall control unless otherwise specified herein. Section 4, this ordinance shall become effective upon adoption. That concludes.
Okay. So that completes the first reading. The next item is, I would ask that the city administrator would you forward this to the Board of Health so they could review it at their next meeting, and then we can have their comments. The next item on the agenda is it's a first reading of ordinance 531. It's an ordinance to amend and restate sections 141-9 and 141-10 of Chapter 141, dangerous or vacant buildings, and amend section 230-57 of Chapter 230, zoning of the Code of the City of Newcastle. Mr. Lusk, would you explain the purpose of this?
Yes, I think, Madam President, you had suggested that the Board of Building Appeals is a rarely used board, and I don't know if it has current members. They may have all expired at this point, and none have been reappointed. The point of the City Board of Appeals is to hear and decide cases and appeals relating to dangerous buildings as cited by the code official. And the point of this ordinance is to basically appoint the Board of Adjustment to serve as the Board of Appeals, since we will always have a Board of Adjustment by both state law and city law. Aside from that, the ordinance has to amend Chapter 230-57 of our code, which is that portion of our code that gives jurisdiction to the Board of Adjustment. So this would increase the board's jurisdiction to address Board of Building Appeals related matters. So again, the Board of Building Appeals addresses dangerous buildings. They could be fire damage, they could be damage due to age or accident, earthquake, whatever.
There's one particular element, and that is that because the city solicitor serves on the Board of Adjustment.
Thank you.
You could mention
yes. In the existing code, it requires the city solicitor to prosecute any actions concerning dangerous buildings. And of course, if the solicitor is sitting on the Board of Adjustment, it can't be both the prosecutor and judge and jury, so to speak, or one of the judge and jury. So this revision allows the city council to appoint someone else, an outside counsel, to prosecute matters that might appear. And that deserves a little more explanation because the prosecution could take place in a couple of contexts. One is in the Justice of the Peace Court. Portions of the dangerous buildings ordinance address criminal fines that would be tried in the JP court. So I could still do prosecutions there, for example. But if we were prosecuting a matter before the Board of Building Appeals specifically, and it was something beyond something the code official wasn't comfortable prosecuting on his own, then outside counsel may be required at that point. And so this ordinance authorizes that.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to consider ordinance 531, to read it into the record?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Okay, anyone want to volunteer to read this one?
I volunteer.
Okay, thank you.
Mike, did you want to do it?
I'm happy to. I'm happy to if you want. It's up to you.
You have such a melodious voice, Mike. Why don't you do it?
I don't, well, the mayor has, he has the veto power, so maybe you should be a council person reading it into the record. No offense.
Well, it's a reading, but it's up to you.
Okay, I'll read it then, if that's an issue. An ordinance to amend and restate sections 141-9 and 141-10 of chapter 141, dangerous or vacant buildings, and amend section 230-57 of chapter 230, zoning of the code of the city of Newcastle. Whereas the city council of the city of Newcastle is charged with the responsibility of ensuring health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of the city of Newcastle by administering and enforcing the regulations of the building industry. And whereas the city's Board of Building Appeals is charged with hearing and deciding cases and appeals relating to dangerous buildings as set forth in chapter 141 of the city code, including the power to affirm, reverse, or modify any decision of the building official. And whereas by the adoption of this ordinance, the city council intends to update, 1, amend and restate section 141-9 of the city code to provide for the ability to retain outside counsel in matters before the Board of Building Appeals. 2, amend and restate section 141-10 of the city, providing for the Board of Adjustment to serve as its Board of Building Appeals. And 3, amend 230-57 of the city code to confirm the jurisdiction of the Board of Adjustment to serve as the Board of Building Appeals. Whereas the city council finds that the provisions of this ordinance are rationally and reasonably related to, substantially advanced, and are narrowly tailored to meet its goal of protecting and preserving legitimate governmental interests, including but not limited to the protection and preservation of the public health, safety, prosperity, general welfare, and quality of life. Now therefore be it ordained by the council of the city of Newcastle the following. Section 1, section 141-9 of the city code, duties of city solicitor, is revised, amended, and replaced as follows. Chapter 141-9, duties of the city solicitor. The city solicitor shall, A, when directed by the city council, prosecute all persons failing to comply with the terms of any order provided for in this code. B, bring suit to collect all municipal liens, assessments, or costs incurred in repairing or causing to be vacated or demolished any dangerous buildings. C, take such other legal action as is necessary to carry out the terms and provisions of this code. D, in the event the city solicitor's membership on the Board of Building Appeals creates a conflict of interest with his duties under this section 141-9, the city shall retain the option to obtain outside counsel to prosecute matters consistent herewith. Section 2, Section 141-10 of the City Code, Board of Building Appeals is hereby revised, amended, and replaced as follows. Chapter 141-10, Board of Adjustment to serve as the Board of Building Appeals. A, the Board of Adjustment shall serve as the city's Board of Building Appeals. The Board. B, except in emergency cases under 141-14 of this chapter, a property owner aggrieved by any notice or order to repair, vacate, or demolish a dangerous building received from the building official under this chapter may file an appeal with the Board of Building Appeals within 30 days from the date of such notice or order. Upon the filing of an appeal as set forth herein, the Board of Building Appeals shall set a hearing date and hold a hearing within 40 days. At such hearing, the board shall receive any evidence which the person aggrieved, the building official, or a complainant may desire to offer, shall make findings, and shall render a decision in writing within 30 days of the date of the hearing. The board, with the concurring vote of the majority of members, may affirm, modify, reverse, vacate, or revoke the action appealed, provided, however, the action of the building official shall be affirmed by the board if the action was not arbitrary or capricious and was taken pursuant to law, and provided further that the decision of the board shall not vary the terms of any law, code, or ordinance. The Board of Building Appeals, subject to approval by City Council, shall have the power to revise or rescind such rules as it may deem necessary or appropriate to regulate and govern practice and procedure before the board and the conduct of the board's affairs. Section 2, existing subsections E, F, G, and H of Section 230-57 in Chapter 230 of the City Code zoning are hereby redesignated as subsections F, G, H, and I respectively, and a new section E is hereby adopted to read as follows. Chapter 230-57, Powers and Duties. The Board of Adjustment shall have the following powers and duties. E, Board of Building Appeals matters. The Board of Adjustment shall serve as the Board of Building Appeals and shall be vested with the jurisdiction, powers, and duties delegated to the Board of Building Appeals as provided in Chapter 141 of the City Code. Section 3, if any section, subsection, sentence, clause, or phrase of this ordinance is for any reason held to be unconstitutional or invalid, such decision shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions of this ordinance. Section 4, in the event any existing ordinances or parts of ordinances are in conflict herewith, the provisions of this ordinance shall control unless otherwise specified herein. Section 5, this ordinance shall become effective immediately upon passage.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We will schedule a public hearing. The next item on the agenda is a motion, discussion, and vote on Resolution 2020-24. It's a resolution approving City of Newcastle Outdoor Recreation Parks and Trails ORPT 2020 grant application. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Do you have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Souter. I'll read this one. This is Resolution 2020-24, a resolution approving City of Newcastle Outdoor Recreation Parks and Trails ORPT 2020 grant application. Whereas the City of Newcastle continues to work with the trustees of Newcastle Common in an effort to help implement their master plan for Battery Park. And whereas one aspect of the plan is a connecting trail from the Parks River Trail to West 3rd Street by interpreting the path of the old Frenchtown Railroad. And whereas the City of Newcastle has filed an ORPT grant pre-application with the Delaware Division of Parks and Recreation, completed by Foresight Associates, Inc. on behalf of the trustees. And whereas the total project cost is $48,212, of which the match is $24,106. And whereas the city will have no financial responsibility for the matching portion of the grant, the match has been approved by the trustees of the Newcastle Common. And whereas the City of Newcastle designates William J. Barthel, City Administrator, to manage the project and coordinate ORPT program requirements for reporting and reimbursement. Whereas the city understands that these improvements funded through the ORPT grant program will remain in outdoor recreation uses in perpetuity. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Newcastle approves the application for ORPT grant funding for the Battery Park Rail Trail, and the City of Newcastle shall abide by all the requirements of the ORPT grant program for reimbursements and stewardship responsibilities. The purpose of this trail is to recognize the historic version of the rail trail, the Frenchtown Rail Trail. And also it's to connect various amenities of the park to each other. So it kind of serves as a backbone, and it would help people get from one place to the next. So any comments or discussion?
This is Councilman Smith. I just want to mention that this is a connector from the bike trail to the wharf. You can go through the city and down Delaware Street and everything, but this provides an alternate route as you come into town on South Street, and you can cut across the park on this new trail that follows the path of the Frenchtown Railroad. So it will be useful as well as an interpretive feature.
Suzanne Souter, I have an observation, then also a question. My observation is that having both walked and biked along that section of the trail along the river, I think having this additional trail will remove some potential for collisions, because the trail along the river is rather curvy and it has a lot of foot traffic and small children and so forth because it's near the playground. So I think giving bikers an option to avoid that will be helpful to pedestrians and bikers, both of them. But my question is, I don't see anything in here of a provision for the maintenance of this trail. Are the trustees committing to fund that?
Mr. Barthel?
Well, yes, I mean, it's in Battery Park. They are responsible for the maintenance of that property, or of the trail.
Probably the case, but wanted to just ask to be sure.
Sure. Yeah.
Councilman Fly, what material is going to be used for the trail? I don't have the insert in front of me. That's why I'm asking.
I didn't hear the question. I'm sorry.
What material is going to be used for the trail?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm not 100% sure.
I mean, we're not going blacktop across Battery Park, are we?
No, I don't think that's their intention. I don't believe that's their intention.
There, on your last page, they have some examples of what.
Let me grab mine. Sorry.
Madam President,
Yes.
I just wanted to, if I could, just for 1 second while Mr. Platt's away, just wanted to point out, Mr. Lasko, I think you probably caught this as Mrs. Ratchford was reading. Under the therefore be it resolved section, the City of New preceding Castle was missing in almost the last sentence.
Yes, I did read in the word new, and I will also ask our council secretary to incorporate that in the resolution should it pass. They also, I understand they're also planning to use some of the sleepers as accent.
Right. I don't have the final, I don't think they've decided, as Mrs. Leary said, there's some suggestions at the back as to what they might use. I don't know that they've just, I don't know, just double check.
Yeah, I think they wanted to put a hint of the rails. I don't know. I don't know how that would work. You know, given the, you know, what's the gauge and what's the width of the path.
Yeah.
So that's probably a detail that needs to be worked out.
Correct, but you're right. There were examples of what they could do, but they're not going to. I don't believe it's. As I said, I don't think it's their intention to blacktop it.
At this point, we're just asking to submit the grant.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, just argument's sake, if you look at the third picture on the last page, that looks like it's blacktop. The first picture to me looks like, I mean, they're hard to tell, and I'm just guessing. That looks like concrete.
I can just say that I've talked to Chris Castagna about this in the past, and they do want to make this look interpretive and not just an ordinary trail. So I can say that much. I can't give you any more detail than that.
So if we if we could just make a decision on the grant application, we can certainly find out more about the materials.
I move that we accept the grant.
Second.
Okay, so at this point, we're going to ask for a vote. All those in favor of this resolution indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the resolution 2020-24 has passed unanimously with that one correction on wording. And we're going to go to the next agenda item, which is a resolution approving reappointment to the Board of Elections. Each member of council gets one nomination. And this is my nomination with confirmation to reappoint Marion Caven to the Board of Elections. She was unable to attend tonight, but she did write an email to City Council. It has been a privilege to serve on the city's Board of Elections. I welcome a reappointment and the honor of serving another term, appreciative of your trust and the responsibility of conducting the municipal elections of the city of Newcastle. Do you have a motion to consider Resolution 2020-25?
Second.
Second, okay, I'm going to read this as is a resolution approving the appointment of one member to the Board of Elections. Whereas the Newcastle City Charter details that the responsibility for conducting all municipal elections in the city of Newcastle shall be vested with the Board of Elections, and whereas the charter further provides that each member of the City Council shall appoint one qualified elector who is also a resident of the city to serve as a member of said board, that the term of this individual so appointed shall be 4 years, commencing the day on which the appointment is made, and whereas the City Council proposes to confirm one appointment to the Board of Elections for a new 4-year term, with that term ending on November 9th, 2024. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council hereby confirms the appointment of the following person to the Board of Elections: Marion Cavan, appointed by City Council President Ratchford, term ending November 9, 2024. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, this resolution has been passed unanimously, and congratulations and thank you very much for all her hard service these years. At this point, we're going to go to the last agenda item. It's a council discussion and possible action. Dobbinsville street repair project and updates. I'm going to ask Councilperson Leary to lead that off and also to get some help from the city administrator and the building official.
Great, thank you. Ms. Vickers, who lives in Dobbinsville, brought to our attention some concerns they had for the neighborhood, and had prioritized the repair of potholes in the area as a number one priority. There were some other concerns she has as well that we've been working with the code official and some other folks that are ongoing still, and they're all very positive. I met with her twice. I went down there Mr. Smith met with us, and the city official and Furio Casali were also down there. On your last page in your council binder, you'll see highlighted yellow areas of where there's some significant potholes that need to be repaired. Also on Center Street, you see the long line from Center Street and at the end, Mr. Bergstrom can also affirm this for me, right at the end of Center Street underneath a tree that you can kind of not see the street, but you see the tree. There's also some potholes there that will also be taken care of, and they don't appear here. The city administrator asked for Cirillo to put a bid on that, and I will turn it over to Mr. Barthel right now to review that.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Leary. Yes, you did, or, of course, after the last council meeting, we looked at it. In fact, I asked Mr. Bergstrom to contact Cirillo. He did, as you pointed out. The cost to make these repairs is $19,830, rounded up $20,000. And so, certainly as based on our earlier conversation about the municipal street aid monies that we have, and the fact that we are doing fairly well in terms of the other revenues we've received to date. Certainly, we think this is something that should be done. We have the revenues to do it, and with council's approval, we can go ahead and get it done in a very quick matter of time. I don't know, Jeff, you want to add anything to that in regard to the conversation you had with Cirillo?
No, we've got time in their schedule to get it done well before cold weather. This is a patch of these are not small patches. The smallest one is 250 square feet. So it's about 315 square yards of asphalt to get milled out and with a 6-inch base coat put in. So it's a project that needs to be done.
Yep.
This is Linda Ratchford. I've been out there and looked at it after a rain, and it needs to be taken care of. There's the concern, not so much now because of mosquitoes, but also it just looks unsightly and it's hard to drive on. So I think this is something we should immediately take care of. Would you like to make a motion, Ms. Leary?
I would. I'd also, if they have any questions, I would like to give Ms. Vickers and Mr. Simpers an opportunity to ask any questions if they have any.
While they're signing in, did we get any other bids?
No, we went directly. No, we went to Cirillo on it.
Ms. Vickers has her hand raised.
Hi, can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, Ms. Vickers, would you like to ask a question?
No, first I just want to thank Ms. Leary and Mr. Smith for coming down so promptly and trying to take care of these problems for us. We do have a lot more concerns down there, and I do believe that Ms. Leary is going to follow through with a lot. And so I just want to tell you guys that we really do appreciate, and we look forward to working with council on quite a few more projects, and also with the chief. We have a lot of things that we'd like to do with outreach, so we just like to thank the council for their time and their help. That's all.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to expend $19,830 rounded up to $20,000 for repair of these streets.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Okay, opposed? None. We passed unanimously and the street repairs will get done.
Yes.
Any other issues you want to bring up, Ms. Leary?
No, there's some ongoing, like we said, outreach things, and there's a house there that had been purchased 5 years ago and had remained boarded, and I believe Mr. Casali has notified the owner of that house to basically do something with it. I'm not sure the wording of that. Mr. Barthel would know that a little bit better. But so we're just 717 is going to sheriff's sale, and this other home is being dealt with. And there's some other things. We're just kind of hitting things one at a time the best we can. And the chief has also spoken with her about outreach for some things out there as well.
I did hear, this is Council President Raj, I did hear some favorable comments for some, one of the residents that there were some improvements being done and they were pleased that some work was being done in the neighborhood on individual houses. So Mr. Rathel, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I would like to just make a quick comment in regard to 717. As we said, first thing earlier in this meeting, it did go to sale today. Dan, what's it about, a 90-day process? Just so that people have, appropriate expectations for what the process is in this type of situation. So before they get the deed, it's what, about 90 days?
Yeah, roughly 90 days. There's a redemption period where the owner of the property can pay the tax bill, basically pay what the winning bid was plus a penalty, a 10% penalty. That's unlikely to happen here. The owner is absolutely an absentee and non-responsive. But once that redemption period is gone, it'll take another 30 days or so. Now, I will say this, that the owner has to, the new buyer has to submit and request the sheriff to sign the deed so we can get it recorded. I've run into at least one situation recently where a person bought the property at sheriff's sale and has never asked for their deed. Now, why they would pay and then not get their deed is beyond me, but these things can take a little longer sometimes than you expect.
If I may, just to piggyback what the solicitor said, so the fact is we are on top of that. We were on top of that in that situation with the investor who, like you said, didn't request the deed. And as I just want to reemphasize what I said earlier as well, which is, the fact that the sheriff or that there are now sheriff sales that are beginning to happen again. We are going to go back and go back into hardcore press to get back into those properties that we think need to go to sale so that we can get these things back into the process. So that's our goal. I think that's something that's important not only for obviously council to know, but folks, all over the city that, we have been somewhat stymied because of the Corona thing and because the courts have been closed, but we will go back into that mode again, like basically immediately. So just to let you all know.
And Mr. Simpers has his hand raised. Hold on one moment.
And Mr. Simpers? It's everybody. All right, go ahead.
Brad Simpers, Brian Simpers, Kirsten Simpers, and Jay Jackson's here. And
Great to have you.
I wanted to talk to the chief. Me and my brothers and our family would be super excited to help out with the Reach Out program and everything that you have. And I'd love to meet up with you and the officer that you have in charge of the Reach Out program, and maybe we can help out somehow with that. And I'd like to thank Valerie and Russell for coming out, and Madam President for coming out also and talking to us over the weekend. And I especially like to thank Mr. Tommy Wilson and the Antonios for allowing us to take care of the flat flower bed at the front of Dobbinsville. And I really appreciate all their help and all the help that you guys are giving us. Thank you very much.
Welcome. I would just like to say thank you to the whole Simpers family because of all the efforts. You're out there cleaning up the neighborhood and making it look nice, and you deserve a lot of credit. Chief, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, just that we're excited to meet with the Simpers as well. And, we're going to pick a Saturday because I know that's the best day for everybody. So that day's coming, and I appreciate the reach.
Okay. Anything else, Ms. Leary?
No. If there is nothing else, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Is it over? Christ, it's been 4 hours.